Al Capone, the very name evokes images of pinstripe suits, Tommy guns, and a brutal era in American history. His story is one of ambition, violence, and the relentless pursuit of power. Born Alphonse Gabriel Capone on January 17, 1899 in Brooklyn, New York, he was the fourth of 9 children in an Italian immigrant family. The Capones, like many immigrants, sought the American dream, hoping for prosperity and a better future. His parents, Gabriele and Teresina, had come to the United States seeking a better life. They worked tirelessly, with Gabriele as a barber and Teresina as a seamstress, to provide for their large family. Little did they know, their son would become one of the most notorious criminals in American history. Al's early years were marked by the struggle to survive in a harsh and unforgiving environment. Growing up in the slums of Brooklyn, Capone's life was far from idyllic. The crowded tenements and rough streets were a breeding ground for crime and violence. Poverty and violence were ever present. The young Capone witnessed firsthand the harsh realities of life in the slums, where survival often meant bending or breaking the law. He attended school for a short time but dropped out at a young age. Formal education held little appeal for him, and he found the streets to be a more compelling teacher. The streets became his classroom and petty crime his education. He quickly learned the ways of the underworld, gaining a reputation for his toughness and cunning. Capone's physical appearance was as imposing as his future reputation. Even as a teenager, he was a large and formidable presence, standing out among his peers. He was a large man, even as a teenager, and carried himself with a swagger. This confidence, combined with his physical strength, made him a natural leader in the rough-and-tumble world of Brooklyn's streets. A scar, earned in a bar fight, ran down his left cheek, leading to the nickname Scarface, a moniker he reportedly despised. This scar was a constant reminder of the violent world he inhabited. This early exposure to hardship and lawlessness would shape the young Capone, setting him on a path that would lead to both immense power and a dramatic downfall. The lessons he learned on the streets of Brooklyn would serve him well in his future criminal endeavors. He was on his way to becoming a legend, but at a terrible cost. The choices he made and the path he followed would bring him wealth and infamy, but also relentless pursuit by law enforcement and an eventual downfall that was as dramatic as his rise to power. Capone's descent into the criminal underworld began in his teenage years. Born in Brooklyn, New York in 1899, Alphonse Gabriel Capone was the son of Italian immigrants. The bustling streets of Brooklyn, with their mix of cultures and economic struggles, were a breeding ground for young men seeking quick fortunes through illicit means. He joined various street gangs in Brooklyn, proving himself to be a capable and ruthless member. The environment was harsh, and survival often meant aligning with the most powerful gangs. Capone quickly learned the importance of loyalty and the brutal reality of street justice. He started with petty theft and other minor offenses, quickly learning the ways of the streets. These early crimes were his introduction to the world of organized crime, where he began to understand the value of fear and respect in maintaining control. One of the most significant influences on the young Capone was Johnny Torrio, a seasoned gangster who recognized Capone's potential. Torrio, known for his strategic mind and business acumen, saw in Capone a raw talent that could be molded into a formidable force. Under Torrio's tutelage, Capone honed his skills in the criminal underworld, learning the intricacies of bootlegging, gambling, and racketeering. Torrio's operations were sophisticated, involving a network of speakeasies, gambling dens, and protection rackets that required meticulous planning and ruthless enforcement. Torrio became a mentor, teaching Capone the importance of loyalty, ruthlessness, and building a network of corrupt officials. This network was crucial for their operations, ensuring that law enforcement and politicians turned a blind eye to their activities in exchange for bribes and favors. In 1919, at the dawn of Prohibition, Torrio relocated to Chicago to manage the burgeoning bootlegging operations for the notorious 5 Points Gang. Prohibition had created a lucrative black market for alcohol, and Chicago, with its strategic location and corruptible officials, was the perfect base for their operations. He summoned Capone to join him, recognizing his protégé's talent for violence and intimidation. Capone's reputation for handling difficult situations with a mix of charm and brutality made him an invaluable asset in the volatile world of bootlegging. Capone eagerly accepted, sensing an opportunity to make a name for himself in the burgeoning criminal landscape of Chicago. The move was not just a change of scenery, but a strategic step towards greater power and influence. This move would prove to be a turning point in Capone's life. Chicago offered a new playground for his ambitions, a city ripe with opportunities for those willing to seize them by any means necessary. Chicago, with its wide-open spaces and corrupt political system, provided fertile ground for his ambitions. The city's political landscape was riddled with corruption, and Capone quickly learned to navigate and exploit these connections to his advantage. He was ready to claim his place as a major player in the city's underworld. With Torrio's guidance and his own ruthless drive, Capone began to build his empire, one that would soon dominate Chicago's criminal activities. His name would soon be synonymous with the violence and corruption that gripped the city during the Prohibition era. Capone's rise to power was marked by brutal gang wars, strategic alliances, and a relentless pursuit of control over Chicago's lucrative illegal enterprises. The 1920s roared in Chicago, fueled by illegal booze, jazz music, and a sense of rebellion against Prohibition. Amidst this backdrop of excess and defiance, the ambition of gangsters like Al Capone found fertile ground. With Johnny Torrio as his mentor and guide, Capone rose quickly through the ranks of the Chicago Outfit, the city's most powerful and feared criminal organization. He ruthlessly eliminated rivals, using violence and intimidation to solidify his grip on the city's lucrative bootlegging, gambling, and prostitution rackets. Capone's methods were brutal, but effective. Capone was a shrewd businessman, understanding the importance of both brutality and public image. He knew that to maintain his empire, he needed to be both feared and respected. He cultivated relationships with politicians, police officers, and even journalists, using bribes and threats to ensure his operations ran smoothly. This network of influence allowed him to operate with near impunity. He presented himself as a benefactor to the city, even opening soup kitchens during the Great Depression, all the while tightening his grip on Chicago's underworld. To many, he was a paradox, a criminal with a heart. His ruthlessness knew no bounds. Capone's empire was built on a foundation of fear and violence. Rival gangs were eliminated with brutal efficiency, often in broad daylight. The streets of Chicago became a battleground, with shootouts and assassinations becoming a common sight. The streets of Chicago ran red with blood, a testament to Capone's ambition and the lawlessness of the time. Newspaper headlines screamed of the latest gangland slayings, capturing the public's morbid fascination. He became a legend, feared and admired in equal measure. To some, he was a Robin Hood figure, to others, a ruthless tyrant. As his power grew, so did his wealth and notoriety. Capone reveled in the luxuries his ill-gotten gains afforded him, from custom-made suits and expensive cars to lavish parties that were the talk of the town. He reveled in the luxuries his ill-gotten gains afforded him, from custom-made suits and expensive cars to lavish parties that were the talk of the town. His lifestyle was a stark contrast to the poverty many Chicagoans faced, and a heavily guarded estate in Palm Island, Florida. This estate was a symbol of his success and a fortress against his enemies. But his reign of terror could not last forever. The very violence that had helped him rise to power also sowed the seeds of his downfall. The violence he unleashed would ultimately lead to his downfall. Law enforcement, pressured by the public and the federal government, intensified their efforts to bring him to justice. Capone was eventually arrested and convicted not for his violent crimes, but for tax evasion, marking the end of an era. Section 4, the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, a turning point. On February 14, 1929, a gruesome act of violence sent shockwaves through the nation and forever tarnished Capone's reputation. 7 men, members of the rival North Side gang, were lined up against a garage wall and brutally gunned down in what became known as the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. Though never officially linked to the crime, suspicion immediately fell on Capone and his organization. The massacre, a calculated act of brutality, was widely seen as a message to Capone's rivals, a chilling reminder of his power and ruthlessness. Public outrage over the massacre was palpable. The sheer brutality of the act, coupled with Capone's growing notoriety, turned public opinion against him. The federal government, under increasing pressure to crack down on organized crime, made Capone their public enemy #1. The massacre marked a turning point in Capone's career. No longer a shadowy figure operating in the fringes of society, he was now a national symbol of lawlessness and corruption. The net was closing in, and law enforcement was determined to bring him down, no matter the cost. Section 5, Eliot Ness and the Untouchables, a relentless pursuit. In response to the growing public outcry against organized crime, a special task force was assembled in Chicago to target Al Capone and his empire. The team, led by a young and ambitious prohibition agent named Elliot Ness, became known as the Untouchables for their supposed immunity to bribery and corruption. Ness and his team were relentless in their pursuit of Capone, conducting raids on breweries and speakeasies, disrupting his liquor supply lines, and seizing millions of dollars in illegal assets. They were meticulous in their investigations, building a case against Capone brick by brick, determined to put an end to his reign of terror. Capone, accustomed to operating with impunity, was enraged by the constant pressure from Ness and his team. He unleashed his lawyers and enforcers, attempting to bribe, intimidate, and even eliminate the agents. But Ness and his team refused to be deterred, their dedication to justice unwavering. The cat-and-mouse game between Capone and Ness captivated the nation, playing out in the headlines of newspapers across the country. It was a classic battle between good and evil, with the fate of Chicago hanging in the balance.